Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of AI Prompts Differentiate Understanding. This is your host, Grace Shao. Many of you all know I also write the newsletter AI Proem on Substack, which provides deep dives and analyses on the APAC AI ecosystem. So give that a follow as well. Joining me today is Tiezhen Wang, or Tom, who is the former head of the APAC ecosystem at Hugging Face. Today, he's here to help us understand the open source community better and the long-term strategies of the Chinese lab. Tiezhen, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you on. We've been trying to make this happen for a while and just so glad the timing's finally worked out. To start, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your journey, and where you're at right now in your career and how you see the whole ecosystem, and also just help us understand Hugging Face a little bit as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Grace, for inviting me. I know, sorry for the long delay. It has been a while, but I'm recently in transition, because I just left Hugging Face. So to give you a quick information about very high level overview, you can think of Hugging Face as the GitHub for AI. If you are not familiar with GitHub, you can think of Hugging Face as Amazon, where you can find all kinds of models in one store. And we are helping. So my job is to help researchers to get their good, which is the open source models on Hugging Face, and they can use the best, all the tools, all the services on Hugging Face to make their models more discoverable and available to everyone. We also offer all kinds of technologies. For example, we allow them to create demos so that developers do not need to download the whole models, and they were able to try it out and see how it goes. And we also offer services so you can create your own agent using open source models. We do all kinds of scaffolding on top of open source models. And we another part of work that we do is to help them getting more attractions. We use I use Twitter mostly to help them getting well known by the public. We write analysis on their models and letting people know what are the new inventions from the model, etc. So we work with researchers across the world. Myself is focused on APAC, especially Chinese researchers. Yeah, that's pretty much a quick overview of what I do. If you have any questions, just let me know.
And how did you get to this role? Because I understand you were with Google for quite a while as well.
Yes, I was with Google as an engineer. I work on ML frameworks. But then we had a bunch of reorg, and I was assigned to a project which is not so open source. But I really like talking to people in the open source world. It's kind of very different. So when you are paid to work something versus you want to work on something yourself, you have very different mentality and very different feelings. So when I was working on the open source machine learning framework, I talked to people outside Google, and I can see the stars in their eyes. They do want to work on something they want, and even though they may not get paid, etc. I really like this feeling. So after I was assigned to the non open source project, I want to try something new, but also in open source. And I was talking to people in Hugging Face, and I really liked them. At that time, Hugging Face was not part of the mainstream. It was a niche product for researchers where researchers can upload models. But I do see there's a huge potential for Hugging Face to grow up, because first, I believe in open source, and the second, Hugging Face is going to be the entry point where all people will come in and search for open source models. But the most important of all is that I feel that Hugging Face is a company who understands how open source works. Open source is a huge leverage. If you use it well, it's going to be very powerful. And Hugging Face is 200 people, very small companies compared to other companies growing up from the same area, but they are able to use open source and that leverage and call out for collaborations across the world and do very impactful things. A lot of big companies are doing open source, but they just don't understand this age. That's the essence of open source. I do feel that Hugging Face is doing really well there. That's one of the reasons. why I want to join Hugging Face.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. I think that's something we definitely will double click on later, especially when we talk about why China's labs seem to have been embracing open source. Just kind of one last question on just the whole ecosystem and how Hugging Face fit into it. What was the philosophy really held by the whole company? Because I actually listened to one of the founders' interviews, Clem's interview recently, and during the interview, he talked about how Chinese scientists have always been long-term contributors to open source technology. And then he said it was really like kind of a pivotal moment around 2022 where American open source contributors kind of took a step back, and then there was a sentimental shift in the ecosystem. Why is that, and how does Hugging Face kind of view the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, there are several questions. Let me try to address them one by one. The first one is the philosophy behind Hugging Face. I think it's really the collaborative mindset. So anything that we see where we can have a collaboration, Hugging Face will just reach out and see if we can collaborate. So if you go to see like a lot of work released by researchers, they will have paper on archive and also their project on GitHub. You will see me on a lot of like these like issue number 1, which is the first issue after like the report has been released, and we just write something saying offer blah 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 blah. Do you want to collaborate on something? Like for anything that we can collaborate on, like we will just call for collaboration. Some will go through, some will not. But this collaborative mindset is like very very different from like a business point of view. From a business point of view, you will first think, oh, what is my edge? And how I win the market, how I compete with others, and what are the end area, like after the competition, like what's the end game, like how it will go. So that's the way of how you can justify the investment and everything. In open source world, it's totally different. It's like, I want to do something. Like I just say it and I do it. And there are developers who want to join in, and we do it together, and we grow the pie gradually. We do not have, like, let me put it the other way. So if you see an open source model coming from one of the Chinese lab, for example, GLM 5.1 is released, and you may think like Kimi or MiniMax, like other open source model provider in China, would compete with them, but actually not. Like you will see, they are like commenting on the tweet, saying congratulations, etc. This is a like collaborative mindset, like where everyone is stepping up on each other. We can like do a lot of like we can as a group, we can continue to push the frontier like forward. So I think this is very very different. Yeah. And talking about like your second question, the Chinese well, I wouldn't say labs, like Chinese researchers, labs, companies, etc. They all want open source. I think there are like 3 different folds. Like the first one is on the researcher side. Like a researcher would always prefer if their work is open source. That's coming from their like academia background, because like when you like on the CS world, when you write a paper, you have to show that it's actually working. You have to show that all the numbers are real. Other people should be able to verify that, and you can only do that by releasing your code, releasing your models to the community, so that other people can evaluate. So for researcher, after they graduate and they go to a company, they will bring this like mindset forward, and by default, they are like open source people. And another perspective is for their self, for the career development of themselves. So as an engineer in big companies, it's very often that you are working on some project and nobody knows that you are working on that project until you say that out on LinkedIn or on your resume. But open source is very different. We know precisely who has contributed to DeepSeek V4, and that's very attractive for researchers, because if I have done great work, I want the whole world to know that I'm doing excellent work. This will help me have better branding, help me to do more collaboration, help me like in the future, like step in the career. So like a researcher would always love open source by default. So that's the first part, like from a researcher's level. The second one is from business level. So like, well, for individual, it's quite easy to embrace open source. Like from manager level, from the executive, they need to justify the investment on open source. I've spent like tens of millions in training a model, and you want me to give it for free. That's crazy, right? Like that's how people think before DeepSeek. Although we have a lot of open source models before DeepSeek, like the trend is completely like changed. Before DeepSeek, people were thinking, oh, maybe like the model is not that good, maybe I'll just open source it. But if the model is like good enough, maybe I'll keep it for private. And that's like one of the reasons why you see like a lot of like people were saying like open source is not that good, especially from Robin. Like a lot of like people do not understanding like how the open source world works. But then like people do realize that if they do not open source, like they do not even have a chance to stand on the market, because their model first is not really good. If they just compete on the marketing like level, on the business level, they do not stand a chance, not even a chance. So like you spend like tens of millions and you get nothing. But if you open source, at least you have some like sharing and people will remember, and also you can have the market for the researchers. I think Qwen team was one of the first team who understand it from a business level and start like open sourcing world. And as the result, it's very good. Like they almost taken the like ecosystem from Llama, and now they are becoming the default for researchers to do research, which is like a huge branding for Alibaba. And like I guess like if Alibaba wants to do any kind of business, like it's quite easy for them to approach to researchers saying, we are not nobody, right? Like, we are the provider of Qwen, and everyone wants to talk with them. And another side for business is that they find it really hard to attract top talent if they do not do open source, because all these talents want their name on papers, etc. And if they can pay a lot of money, but they still do not have the best talent. But on the other side, if they do open source and the researchers know that they come to this group and they can have their name marked on like on history, it's going to be a very, very attractive. So like this company, even not releasing the best models, like they try to release something to make researchers happy. Like it's kind of like their company perk. That's another reason. But after DeepSeek, everything changed. People know that if I do open source, I can have like huge branding for my company. DeepSeek is not like doing any kind of commercial stuff like outreaching to customers. Yet they still have a huge valuation of like I think the most recent number is 14 million like HK Hong Kong dollar. That's a lot of money. So like by doing open source alone, they can make money. And that changed the mindset for a lot of people. And so after DeepSeek, Kimi, GLM, MiniMax, and Stefan, they all come into this open source world. And actually the success, they have made a lot of success stories. Like GLM and Kimi, by doing open source, like a lot of more people understand them, and they kind of open up the global market, not just the market in China. And for them, I feel that it's not like losing a lot of money because they are doing advertisement in a different way. Kimi was spending tens of million RMB per year on advertisement, and the result is very short retention. People like know them, come to their site, and they do not feel any different, and they just move away. Now the researcher team, the manager, the executive knows that the best score on open source benchmark is the best advertisement. So they can concentrate all their power, not wasting them on advertisement, but concentrating all their money and resources on training the best model. And but this by itself, like it's the best marketing, and they can like create like great models and start earning money. So like I feel that like on the business level, like everything starts to make sense. But now there's a new challenge, which is how you can stop people from taking the free ride. Like it's a long-standing problem for open source. Like I did something like, for example, I made like a database. I spent a ton of engineering hours. I open source it, but I'm not making any money because the cloud provider is like taking that for free and start making money and monetizing it. It's happening for open source world as well. Like I open source the model, and all these inference providers and chip makers like NVIDIA, AMD are making money, but not the researcher who create the initial model. That's why you see some licensing change and discussion on that. Like Kimi did the first non-commercial license, and then like made a more restrictive version. But like I don't think that's the final version. Like people are still like kind of like trying different things, and I believe like maybe in 1 or 2 years we will have a more standard way of like, balancing open source and commercialization, etc. So that's the second level. The third level is society level. So the Chinese government is really encouraging people to do open source. If you do open source, you have extra credits on your bachelor education, etc. And Shenzhen recently announced a very interesting policy. So you can have free housing point if you do open source on GitHub. Like it basically they are
So the
categorizing.
incentive, yeah, goes straight to the students, like even in academia while they're still in university.
Yeah. So it's kind of cultivating this open source culture when like other researchers and developers are still in universities, which is really good. So I do feel that the culture of open source is, if they are winning the young students, like we are going to see more open source project. And to be honest, like I do feel that that's the right approach, because like if you're not thinking about open source, you're thinking like traditional way of collaborating with people, which is company or corporation. And I feel that like the essence of why we had corporation or company is not keeping pace with how we evolve now. Like think about like you set up a company in Hong Kong like 200 years ago. Why? Because you have a group of people. You want this group of people, like that's why it's called company, right? Like you have a group of people and you want them to work together. And how you can make sure that everyone had their benefits. Like everyone is doing a lot of work. Obviously, they want to have a return. And you do that by setting up the shares and also the voting system. That's how a group of people is like working together. But now like the word company has changed. It's more like a multi-international company where the worker in the company has no word in like deciding like how the company runs. As open source world is more likely the original version of a company. You have GitHub, you know who has contributed what. Like everyone know your contribution, and you can have your name listed. The group of like people coming from all around the world, they can collaborate on something. They do not need to be part of a big company, going through all the interview process. They can just collaborate. So I think that's very, very interesting. And now with Zoom, Tencent meetings, and all the Google Docs, it's much easier to collaborate internationally. I don't need to know who is contributing the PR, but I know like someone is interested in my project and we can work together. And like I feel that that's probably the future way of how people can collaborate. That's to end the last point on society level. I think the society is advocating for open source, and also like open source is probably the way how the society will evolve.
Thank you. That is like so insightful packed that I have to like digest that. But you mentioned quite a few different topics, which I can definitely take this conversation in different directions. To start, I have two questions, and they're actually unrelated, so one at a time. Number one is you really make a point about China being really a strong advocate on open sourcing the LLMs. However, I think, could you tell us the history of open source in China in general? Like, was there like a tradition to want to open source technology to even pre-LLM days? That's number one, first half of that question. The second half of that is, you say there's a lot of incentive for researchers to actually want to open source everything, right? And then therefore they can claim their contribution. Well, in the recent interview between Zhang Xiaojun and DeepMind's Yao Shuiyu, I think maybe you've also listened to it. One thing that really stood out to me was how he was saying people need to be like responsible. And like for someone who's not technical, I actually really struggled to understand what he meant at first until like actually John actually asked him to clarify as well. His whole point is that in academia, people are so used to only claiming a certain section of what they contribute. So for example, for a big piece of paper or research, that you would take credit for what you contributed, right? And you want to make sure that it's what best optimized, known, heard, seen, whatever, right? Recognized. However, in terms of how LLM can work properly in terms of the long run, whether it's like, further in post training and further, usage, whatnot, it's important that people don't claim so much credit to their own part of the work. It's more important that people work collaboratively. But kind of to your point on open source, that they can work collaboratively and make sure that each piece works together better instead of each piece working best on their own. So it kind of contradicts to your comment on why people want open source, because in that sense, wouldn't it make sense for people to not want open source? I don't know. That's another question. And the third part of this is really, if open source makes so much sense for tech companies, that makes so much sense for academias. Then why are the American labs so anti-open source right now? Like what is driving that? Is it purely because commercial reasons or philosophical reasons? This is very big, but you did throw a lot at me, so I'm gonna throw these questions back at you.
Yes, sorry for my very long answer. I think it probably like by itself worth writing a blog post, and it's like with enough content, and I can elaborate more. But great questions for the three. Like, can you remind me? Like, I guess we can go through them one by one. Can we like can
Just like in general, open source China open source. What's the kind of sense on that beyond LLM, right? Like why did Chinese companies always contribute to open source and technology? Clem talked about this in his interview, but he didn't go into that about it, right?
yeah,
So
okay.
number
Let's
two,
let's
number two was just about yeah, and number two was just about like why do these academics want to claim their names,
mhm,
right?
yeah.
Is it better for the company in the end, or is it just best for them, like the selfish reason? And number three is why are American labs kind of anti-open source right now?
Yeah. So let's try to address the first one. I think it's a great question, and that why I do see the shift. So I feel that AI is probably one of the very few area where Chinese contributors dominates. So open source contributors dominates. If you look back to like, for example, I would say like the initial days of like modern open source comes from like Linux or Apache or database and everything. And where you do see a lot of like individual contributors from China, but you are not seeing enough like Chinese company creating a project and then like the project gets adopted globally. You are seeing that gradually when we move to the area of cloud native, like when the Kubernetes comes out and a lot of like Chinese cloud providers are trying to really pay attention to this whole open source world. And you will see that this grows, but now it is like this. So it grows exponentially. So I think it comes from like two folds. Like the first one is the Chinese participation in the global market. It needs time to warm up. Like for example, a lot of like Chinese contributors, they can only contribute 2 projects in Chinese because of the language barrier. So that kind of limit how much they can actually do. And now with large language models, with like better like education in the new generation of developers, the language barrier is not that strong. That's why that's how the Chinese open source contributors can make a better impact. And another one is so in the traditional like way of a company's like how a company structure itself. If you do like open source project, it's kind of hard to justify your credits because the open source by itself is not the core business of a company. Like there are very, very few companies who had their core business laying on open source. Like PingCap could be one of them. Like PingCap start with open source and then find the monetization plan. But that's so small, so few of them. So and in the new areas, like a lot of company, like their core business is open source and plus monetization. Like even for IPO the companies, for public listed company, like MiniMax is basically one of such example. Like they have their best models open source and then trying to make money. So like this is very different. Like if your core business is open source, of course you will put more resource on open source and it's more likely for your project to gain like a lot of developers. And I feel that the third one is the international collaboration has never been easier before, apart from language barrier. So after the pandemic, like I feel that all of a sudden everyone is used to like Zoom and Hangout and collaborating with someone who you don't see face to face. And this is a great chance for open source project to ramp up because before that you have to meet face to face and the bandwidth and the people you can meet is quite kind of limited. And now you have a huge, like as long as your project is great, like you have a huge pool of potential developers. And the last one is probably AI by itself, like coding agent itself. Although it does make code review much harder because like there are probably a lot of AI swap, but it really lowers barrier of who can contribute to an open source project. Before, like you want to contribute to a project, they are probably developing in a language you do not know, and also the code base is pretty strong. A developer might not be able to contribute to the project until he has a very thorough understanding, and that's probably like months of work. Now you can just ask AI how this part works, and I only need this feature, and what are the like code where are the code I need to modify, and and I can just give it a test locally and it works. Like I contributed to some Rust project without like being a Rust expert. So that's like how AI makes everything better. So I think like it has all these reasons. There are probably more, but like I think someone at the end of the day, and in 2 or 3 years, maybe starting to like write some history about how every single aspect of like technology involvement and everything, people's mindset shift, how like how to cultivate the open source spirit. But I think that's top ones coming out of my mind.
And then the second question was just that would researchers focused on their own name and frankly ego in this sense actually be the best way to help cultivate the best LLM or whatever product that's the end product that's to be shipped? Does that make sense? Because it kind of contradicts what Yao Shunyi was saying on Zhang Xiaojun's product podcast, right? He was saying in that sense, a lot of researchers will try so hard to only own what they are working on, but they have less of a sense of responsibility for the bigger project.
Yeah, I haven't like really read the podcast like entirely, but talking to your point, I feel that um, like open source or not, like or having researchers name this data on papers or not, like it's actually a game changer. Like if you are a researcher and you might want to stay in academia, why? Because all the papers you publish is very important to your career. Like everyone see like you have published which paper with like who, and the paper will like also mention that you contribute to which part of work. Are you a like corresponding author? Like are you the main person, or you are just like contributing a part of it? And there's H index to measure the impact of a researcher. So like you have all that infrastructure working for you if you stay in academia. But if all of a sudden you want to start working for a company, you lose off that because the company might be able to say, we have a policy where all your open source and all your paper publication, even writing a blog, is controlled by the PR team, and they have to decide if you can do certain level of things. So your exposure is reduced. You might be very happy because you earn much more, like 10x the salary compared to be a assistant professor. Like after 5 years, if you ever want to go back to academia, like that's impossible because you lose all of like your track record. And with open source, like things are very different. The top neo lab wants to hire the best talent from academia, and the people from academia wants to work for the lab. But at the end of the day, the two system is the same system because like all the record is public. So it's very easy for people to come in and come out, come in and come out. It's kind of different from people coming from academia and then lose track in academia and get lost in the company world. So I do feel that having your name listed on the work you publish is very important. It's kind of a whole concept of 包产到户. So your branding grow with whatever you have done. So your reputation is based on whatever you contribute. So you need to pay extra attention on that.
I see what you mean. And the last bit of just now what we were talking about was just why is that if you believe open source makes so much sense to these researchers, that so many researchers in the US, or at least some of the companies, the entities right now, are not willing to go open source.
Yeah. There are a lot of companies who like change their position. Like Google used to be the company which like embrace open source the most. Like Google open sourced and like TensorFlow, like Kubernetes and a bunch of other like important open source projects. They open sourced like Transformer, which is the cornerstone of our modern AI system. So Google was like really embracing open source. But I feel that at some point in time, like Google stopped like doing all the open source work because they kind of letting OpenAI and other companies taking the free ride. Like Google did a lot of like fundamental work, and then like it's kind of taken by other company for free. Like and also like OpenAI and Anthropic, I feel that they are still contributing to open source, but like that's not their main project. Their main project are hidden secrets that they do not want to share so that other people can catch up. And the research and like business is getting so coupled. For example, a researcher in OpenAI find a way to improve the intelligence level by like 10%. Let's take O1, for example. They managed to find out how to make model think. And by this COT and thinking process, the model is like way much smaller, way much smarter. But they do not want to share the gist. As long as they do, like other people will catch them up. So like it's kind of a very restricted environment. Although like researchers may still want to open source some of their work and have their name listed there and sharing like very like detailed observation, but like the business doesn't just allow them to,
It's
because
a
you are
business reason, end of the day.
yeah. And also researchers can also like talk like in some conference. I know how I know how O1 was like roughly made by like reading a bunch of YouTube videos from the internet made by OpenAI researchers. But after that, like you see less and less very detailed research sharing, even the videos or recordings by them. I guess they kind of learned the lesson. But
Become the
like
compliance reasons.
yeah, that could be part of the reason. On the open source world, like it's kind of different. Like so before DeepSeek R1 was released, a lot of people were speculating how OpenAI was like doing O1 and they trying things in different way. And after DeepSeek R1 is released with all the recipes and all the data they shared, like the open source world seems to be converged on the path. Although that path might be different from O1 because we never know how O1 was made. But then like because of DeepSeek contribution and sharing, everyone knows how to make thinking chain, and the whole ecosystem is evolving really, really fast. That's one of the like real value of open source, because like everyone can just collaborate. Like no one is like holding secrets. But there are still a lot of secrets, like how you can run as efficient as DeepSeek. Like that's like too technical. Like that's not too much on the research side. So yeah,
So on that note, yeah, I want to follow up on that. I think I recently wrote about something which is speaking to a lot of researchers. It got me a sense that DeepSeek, in a way, is now becoming essentially like a foundation for everyone because a lot of the labs in China are looking to DeepSeek to see if there's any like engineering breakthrough, like your point, and they build on top of each other. Help us understand like each of the labs, because you said they're cost constrained, they're compute constrained, they're talent constrained, right? Their resources are constrained in every single aspect you can think of compared to the American peers. Now, why does it make sense that they all open source, and how are they all optimizing for their own goals at this point?
yeah. So open source by itself, as we just talked about, is an accelerator of the whole ecosystem. So DeepSeek shared all their like knowings and discoveries and what things work, what things doesn't work. This by itself is accelerating the whole industry, not just Chinese open source, but also like US open source and US like closed source. Like they just don't say how much they learn from DeepSeek, but I believe everyone is learning from DeepSeek. Not just that, like DeepSeek also contributed to GRPO, which has become the most used like algorithm, like reinforcement learning algorithm in the industry. So they did a lot of like contributions. And if you check recent model architecture evolvement, like what proposed by DeepSeek is becoming the standard and getting adopted by many people. Like for example, Kimi K point 2.5 was using like a model architecture very similar to DeepSeek's. And GLM 5.1 was like adopting a lot of components from DeepSeek architecture as well. Like this kind of like sharing and learning and co-evolvement is one of the, like I would say, great of how China is able to catch up with the US in certain area, although having restricted compute and restricted capital, I would say. If US like open source is like working again, like the whole ecosystem, like everyone was trying to open source, I would say like the human race would be evolving much faster than what we are doing now.
So on that, how do we understand the accusations of what is being distilled, what is technically shared, how do I understand the gray area of that? Like the accusations from a lot of American labs, Chinese labs right now, like you just said, a lot of American labs are learning from Chinese labs. Frankly, within the researcher community, it's not even Chinese versus US, it's really just labs with each other and against each other if they have to, right? Intellectually competing. So then how do we understand what the industry agreement is on the distillation? Why is it so contentious right now?
On distillation, yeah, that's a great question. Like I can only give you my perspective. First, like, well, distillation is a very broad word. We are distilling distillating from each other as well. Like I learn from you, you're learning from me, and we are all learning from books and like papers and all this public information. So I would say like a distillation is a very common practice, like basically how you learn from others. Like you might have a model which summarize the books and doing a bunch of explorations. And the way for the model itself to move forward and evolve is to distill from its historical data and historical experiments. And like that works for like another model trying to learn like your model as well. And on the research field, like distillation is like very common. Like DeepSeek R1 was released with MIT license specifically. So I actually asked the team about it. They choose MIT license because they want their model to be distilled by others, because that was the only model that works really well with the thinking chain, and they want all the open source model to be able to have that. Like they have shared all the recipes, but others do not have data. So DeepSeek design like their like small models so that, and also the recipes so that other people can easily distill DeepSeek, get in the thinking chain and use that on their own models. So like this distillation is happening like everywhere, and I think like US companies are distilling each other as well. Like I've seen like the recent discussion on Twitter in public where Elon Musk and Sam Altman was like kind of battling on that. So yeah, and if you like think about it the other way, so if you do not allow a model to distill, the output of a model to be able to train a model which is from a competitor, it's kind of a very interesting point. Like if we say, I'm reading a book, I'm telling you the story. So you, after reading the output from me, which like think of me as a model, like you're reading my summary, and you are not allowed to share the summary to others. You have to read the book, the initial book, like not using my summary because of the license, etc. That's kind of like ridiculous. Like that's not how human like transfer knowledge in the past like a few like thousands of years. Like I have a very broad argument. I think that anything like generated by AI should not be copyrightable. So like it should be in public domain, like anything generated by AI, because like anything generated by AI is a distillation of like human entire history and everything that human has created. And if you just take that for free and asking other people to not use that, like it's kind of a waste, and it's kind of like blocking like people from evolving forward, because like human content do not have this restriction, and why you are putting this restriction on something not copyrightable and generated by machine. So that's something I do not really understand. So I do see there are terms and conditions saying that my output cannot be used to improve other models. But I don't think that's kind of valid. I'm not sure if someone eventually will file something on the court and we can have a case on that. Currently, I think we like there are a lot of like things to discuss, but it's not about if we can distill a model or not, but about something like bigger. Should the model creator even have this right to restrict others from distilling from their models?
That's really interesting. I think that a lot of the discussions in the public space is really about whether you can use copyright work of human output. And then the argument is always like, just you cannot distill because the company said there's no distillation allowed. But like to your point, there is no actual clear black and white rule or regulation around this right now. And in fact,
I'm not a
it's a bit
lawyer, but like I
murky.
can find
Yeah.
a very clear answer on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. Okay, I want to kind of go to China. Like we kind of talked a bit about the big picture, well, a lot about the big picture, but let's look at just the China labs. I mean, I know that you represent APAC back then with Hugging Face and you worked around APAC, you lived in Australia, but for the sake of this, Chinese labs right now probably are the most relevant out of APAC. Do you think I'm missing anything actually on the APAC conversation? Like, do you think anyone else in the region is relevant in this
Korea
space
is
that we can
doing
talk about?
really well.
Yeah,
Korea
give
is
us some picture on that.
the most one of the best model is probably Upstage. They initially they create a Korean model leaderboard, like open source version of like
That's
model
funded by their
leaderboard.
government, right? That's their
Well,
government
no,
funded.
no, the leaderboard was not funded by government.
Mm.
So Korean, like it's actually like a very impactful country, but at the earlier days, there aren't enough Korean data. Like even for ChatGPT, I think until ChatGPT before, the model doesn't speak good Korean. So the model was able to speak very good Chinese from day one, like from ChatGPT 3.5, but because of the like data volume, etc., speaking Korean was always a challenge until ChatGPT 4. At the time, like now, the open source model is able to speak like Korean. So Upstage create a leaderboard. So the way they solve problem is very interesting. They are not solving problem by solving problem. They're solving problem by helping others to solve the problem. So instead of creating a model right away,
What does
they
that
create.
mean? I heard about Upstage from VC in Korea as well, but I don't know the detail about it. Tell us more about who they are, what they're doing.
Well, I don't know too much about like who they are, but like I only see their open source contribution. I think the founder is a professor in Guangzhou, but he's Korean and moved to
I see.
US. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I'm not really up to date with that information. But I just want to call out because I think that's a very interesting paradigm. Like, for example, if you are a company, you have your own problem you want to solve. Like, how do you want to solve it? Like you are going to hire some people and define the problem and try to use your own people to solve it, right? So that's the old way. What's the open source way is you publicly define the problem. You have a leaderboard. Like you might do like a private eval or public eval. It all depends on you, but the problem is you have to list your problem publicly and you have to tell everyone that you can contribute to this problem by submitting a model to a URL, and we will do evaluation and see how each model is evolving on this area. So they basically have a leaderboard. And you are like a lot of researchers would be very interested because now they have a problem to solve. Before they do not even know Korean was a problem. So now they have a problem to solve, and you will see that the curve goes like it goes up because there are more and more researchers coming in, and all their work are open sourced. A new researcher wants to jump in the field, they will first have a look on the leaderboard to see how far away from like a really usable benchmark. And then he can investigate all the previous attempts and find his own way of like kind of just changing a tiny bit and apply that to the past people's work and submit to the leaderboard. And now we are seeing like people making progress on the leaderboard. So that's a very, very clever way because it's not one company solving the problem. It's like we are opening the door for everyone to come into this playground and try to solve the problem together. I think within a few months, they were able to get thousands of submissions, which is really massive because just imagine you hire a 10-person people, you won't get that. And now it's by this new way of doing things like building public, evolving public, you're having a lot more submissions and you are educating people, etc. So they have this very impactful and inspiring leaderboard, and then they they released a model called Upstage for or something. I can't remember. It has been a while, and like the Korean dataset and the Korean models are like accelerating very fast on Hugging Face. I think it is now the fourth largest models speaking Korean. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm going to shamelessly self-plug in. People can listen to the episode I recorded with one of the leading Korean VCs as well. That was
Okay.
published last week. He
Could
gave
you
a
help?
good
Yeah.
AI ecosystem breakdown.
Could you help me like do some like DD first, and like just make sure all the data are correct. Yeah, you can.
No. He did talk about Upstage as well. It's very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I want
also
to. Oh, sorry,
yeah.
go on.
Okay. Oh, you asked for APAC. So in Singapore, there are a lot of like great researchers. Like a lot of like Chinese researchers will go to Singapore as well. Like Hong Kong too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the ecosystem is a bit overlooked by, I think, Western markets, but definitely there's a lot happening in around Asia. APAC as in including Australia as well, and Southeast Asia, East Asia, Northeast Asia. Okay, I want to bring it back to China. We've been kind of talking about China kind of more on the high level sense. Now looking at the companies themselves or the labs, we want to break it down. Just give us a sense, like how do we understand Moonshot, MiniMax, DeepSeek, Zhipu, if you have to put it in one bracket, versus the hyperscalers, Tencent, Alibaba, and ByteDance, in terms of their strategy, in terms of the capabilities? Like, how should we understand this ecosystem right now? Are there other relevant players that you think I've missed, maybe like Xiaomi or anyone else?
You mean like how the model creator NeoLab are collaborating with Hypercluster? Is that your question?
No, I just think it's like the people, the people who are creating LLMs are researching
Yep.
on how to deploy LLMs. These are the main players, right? How do they differ? How are they similar? What are we seeing like on the ground? Are some of them becoming more irrelevant? Are some of them becoming, maybe say we just talked about DeepSeek becoming almost infrastructure provider for the whole ecosystem? Talks are that MiniMax is very focused on multimodality. Zhipu is very focused on coding capabilities. Alibaba, Tencent really trying to push out commercialization via their existing applications. How successful that is, that's a different question. Just like on a overview of these players.
Yeah, I do think like they're kind of converging. Yeah, because everyone know that coding is the whole market for coding is booming, and if you have a good coding model, you can sell it for profit, for large profit. And I do feel that everyone is rushing for coding. Like there are people exploring like different things, like for example, Tencent is putting a lot of efforts on Hunyuan doing OCR stuff, and a lot of other companies are doing video generation. But like at the end of the day, I think from a strategy level, I don't feel that there are a lot of difference. Like it's more likely a case where you have data. For example, it makes a lot of sense for ByteDance and Kuaishou to work on video generation models because they have a ton of data. And also, like, do you have like a large enough scale? Like for example, Kimi is not very active in making all the apps. Like Tencent is making models. They are making like great apps, like for example, AMA, like a QA app, like based on all the Tencent data. It's very popular. Like they make Q Cloud. Like Tencent is able to do that because Tencent has a huge talent pool. Like Tencent is a huge company, right? Whereas like if you look at Kimi, Kimi is very conservative in doing all that because Kimi is still like a very small company. So I think from a very high level, like everyone was like on the same page about like the strategy. It's just more how much resource do you have? What are the advantage of you? Like, do you have data? Do you have like distribution channel? Do you have like product design, like success story, etc. So yeah, I'm not sure if I answer your questions.
No, that's good. So we kind of talked about why researchers want to open source. We talked about these companies are somewhat doing the same thing. So then this leads me to the question. We know that open source or open weight does not actually mean they don't make money. However, it obviously means that it's harder to commercialize, as we like alluded to with the US labs, why they made those decisions. Then how do these companies find ways to monetize and sustain their businesses then?
Well, like in the US, there are also labs dedicated in making open source models and still like making money from like either donation or from other like parts like selling APIs, etc. Like it's basically the same way in China too. Like for example, DeepSeek is run by, I would say, donation from the like people who play the A stock market. There are labs run by VCs, and a lot of labs are already profitable by like selling tokens. Like GLM has recently raised the per token price because like they see a huge number of demand and they are like running short on compute. Yeah, like open source can make money. Like there are a ton of ways for open source model provider to make money. I have a lot of ideas. In case you are interested in making your lab profitable, you can contact me.
Yes,
But
everybody
honestly,
find Tom.
yeah. But honestly, there are a lot of ways. Like the simplest way is to sell token. If you have the best model, you can sell token for profit, and people will actually buy your token. So it's very interesting because when we combine like science and technology, we always consider it's the same thing. Like for model, it's the same. Like when we think about models, we just think, oh, a model that generates token, etc. But that actually there are two different parts. The first one is training, where you have the model, and after you get training, you open source the weight you train. Another part is the inference. So you need to run a lot of like optimized CUDA kernels in order to make your token cheap and fast. Either bracket can make a lot of money. For example, you can open source the fine-tuned model, not the base model. So if a company want to use open source model for fine-tuning on their own data, they cannot be building on a fine-tuned model. They have to find the base model. And if the base model is not open sourced, you can sell that and also like different company might have like different client might have different requirement on the model. The Neo Lab can collaborate with the client directly and provide some kind of like training and post-training support. So that's a way of making a lot of money actually, because training is very expensive. Like it involves very expensive like researchers and all data and compute. On the inference side too, because the inference is tightly coupled with the data center you own. So your optimization strategy, there's no guarantee that your optimization will work on a different cluster. So like a lot of people just do not open source the inference recipe because it's not that useful. And also it's kind of a moat. So the model provider who creates the model, they know how to optimize the model best when the model is released, because they have seen the model for months, and they have done a lot of optimization on the model inference. And when the model is out, like everyone else, it's just starting to know the model and doing some optimizations. So of course, the model provider will sell token in a much efficient way compared to all other competitors. 3 months later, when the outside inference provider gets to know all the secrets and do very optimized kernels, there's a new model coming up. So the model maker, the people who know the model from day zero, always have an advantage on selling the tokens. So that's one of the
I see
very
what you mean.
important way
Yeah.
how they can
Hmm.
make money.
Yeah. And does DeepSeek V4 coming out have an impact on how the GLMs of the world or Kimi make money? Like essentially their strategy with the fact that you just said they just raise prices on their tokens.
Yeah. So GLM and Kimi doesn't sell DeepSeek V4 Pro. So they are not competing with each other directly. Like I would say the capabilities on par with each other. So it's more like a user taste. Which one is the better? There's no clearly winning between all three models. So we'll see like Zhipu's stock price was getting down because people were so worried about DeepSeek. But then they realized that like the Zhipu token selling is not like quite impacted, so the stock price bounced back. But at the end of the day, I would say it's actually a good thing for them. So GLM 5.1 is adopting a lot of like core design in DeepSeek with 3.2, I think, like model architecture, and they were able to cut down the cost by adopting all these exploration from DeepSeek. Now V4 Pro is out. Like I don't know the details, but like a very simple guess is that Zhipu is able to cut down the cost because they can adopt new things from DeepSeek architecture. Zhipu on one side, because of the demand is so high, so they can increase the per token price, and they can learn from DeepSeek and cut down the cost. So
Actually
Zhipu is
have a
going.
higher margin.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. This is something I think they've talked about as well, like really being able to learn from the engineering breakthroughs that DeepSeek puts out every time. Okay, I'm mindful of time. I just kind of want to have a few questions on the future outlook. You posted on X recently saying that you've been thinking a lot about how do we make AI bootstrap itself, and you know you're going through this transition yourself. You're thinking about the future of AI. What does it mean? For the open source future as well. Tell us a bit about where you stand right now and how you think of this bigger picture.
Yeah, I'm still doing like some exploration on my side. I think like this whole AI bootstrapping logic has already been implemented by a lot of like big lab internally. The idea is very simple. Like in compiler world, you can design a programming language and write a compiler like probably in well-known languages like C, and then you will first implement this language like using the like C code. In the next iteration or after a few iterations, you are able to implement this language using your own language. So it's called a bootstrapping. Like you are basically evolving on your own. Like you are not relying on something which is not from your language. So it's like putting it another way. Like if you see how normal like a living creature, like how they replicate itself and how they evolve. I don't need to like have a screwdriver somewhere to like engineer my kid, right? Like my kid just born all by itself. But how far are we from AI to do similar things? Now we have like coding agent, very powerful. We have our like AI training, like pipeline recipe, kind of stabilized, at least for small sized models. So are we really far from like AI able to get one of my idea? Like I give him the direction and he's able to like first bootstrap a very simple version and gradually evolve towards that goal. Like I think it's like highly possible. So at the end of the day, we might be able to like just tell him what I'm going to do without like giving him all the harness and all the like detailed guidance. And I'm not like talking to him like 100 turns, and he's able to like first lay out what he needs to do and have a plan, and then probably design a DSL or agent all by himself, and probably he will create a model ways to help him to get adapted to this goal, and then he can just keep evolving. All I need to do is to give him more fuel, which is compute, and he's able to like do some evolvement and all by himself. It's kind of like a if you have recently read Andrew Capacity's Twitter, like there's a concept called auto research, but auto research is just like evolving on the model weight, like it's not evolving on the agent and harness. I think like on the agent level and harness level, there are also a lot of things to do so I'm quite new on this journey. What I was able to do is to bootstrap a very simple agent, and I can use that agent to optimize the agent. But I think like eventually we will get like the weights involved to like when the model realizes, and I'm not just needing an agent, I can create a bunch of data and improve my weights. He's able to like evolve from that too.
So in the future, how important is the capability of the models versus the harness and then the industry expertise then? Because right now, so much of the conversation is still about, the models are very strong. We are seeing what you're saying already, that agents starting to build out things automatically, but we still need the taste, we still need the industry expertise to guide them. I find it hard to imagine that, you can plug in something, just say, I want this to be done, and the agent just starts doing it exactly to your taste and your imagination. Do you really think that's happening?
Yeah, I do feel that it's happening. Like we are using agent to like, especially coding agent to code something that we are completely unfamiliar with. And I'm quite confident that it will actually work. The reason is that like I have defined a set of goals, and as long as I see that it's moving towards that direction, like I'm good. I do not need to understand the code line by line. Like it
Hmm.
just evolves. But like the difference is I'm using the coding agent to do something else. What I can do is to use the coding agent to improve coding agent itself, and using the coding agent to generate the data and train the model that the coding agent is using. And I would call that a bootstrap, not like just using like I think I'm already quite happy with coding agent to do something else, but just like
Interesting. I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
end on a more philosophical note. So, do you view the argument that AI is going to replace humans then? Or do you think AI is going to be in the role to support humans if we could keep on going down this path?
Well, like it's actually a very interesting question, and I feel that people do have different like feelings, but like from a like pure technology point of view, I do feel that like it's one condition of so technology is not the only thing that will decide like everything. Like you mentioned that if it's going to help humans, well, it's not really technology by itself to decide. Like it can be used in different ways in different social structure, in different like tradition and etc. It's like giving you a gun, and you can you can do things
It's not
in
a good
good.
analogy,
Yeah,
but yeah,
it's not. Yeah. Like just imagine that you going back to history with all your
yeah.
knowledge of modern society. Are you going to help the like the society you like the history you go back to, or are you able to help? Like I think it's
Yeah.
basically the same. If you have AI that knows everything, you can just think of it as human being in like 2000 years in the future, and now you have it, and what it is going to help on the society. Like
It's
it
also
really.
it's like that saying, it's like your own capability of using it is the cap to the cap of itself. Also, I think there's a lot of argument and discussion around the fact that even the society as we know it today, like the knowledge work that we all have, that we normalize, are not even created like until the recent 100 years. And if AI is to disrupt that and replace human in that sense, why is it so bad? Because it alleviates us to do other things that human, as the multifaceted beings that we are, can do. Is that kind of part of the argument as well, where like even if it replaces us or it helps us, it's only helping us to actually alleviate some of the things. If you take a step back, the things that we don't want to do. right? Where we can maybe go touch grass. I don't know, maybe this is a very optimistic view of it, but there has been people saying like the cap on AI capability is a cap of your own intellect or your own cap of your own ability to navigate or use AI. So the more you can use AI, the more it can help you. The less you can use it, actually, the more it will replace you.
Well, I think it's very interesting to define what is you. Like, are you defining you as everyone, or are you defining you as people who have compute?
We're getting really philosophical now.
No, it's not. It's actually a very, very, very interesting question happening right now.
Yeah.
Anthropic like coding agent is able to do a lot of things, but people are kind of imagining that everyone is getting a lot more powerful with the models. But what if one day Anthropic just say you cannot use your coding agent to do certain things? It already happened. Like Anthropic said, "Oh, you cannot use your agent to do automated tasks." The other thing, like there could be other limitations. I have a very bold argument is that the reason why we are able to use AI so cheap that even us, like we do not own a data center, even us can use that, is because our data is still valuable. If you use subscription, our data is going to be distilled by Anthropic to further improve the model. Like they are able to give us a discount because they still need our data.
So your point is that one day when they capture enough data, they will not even give us this kind of access for free or for
It
cheap
depends
price.
on how they define you. You ask like you or something like how they define their user, how they define who could be part of the game. Like if
So
one
then
day,
the question is, no, but then my question is, then there's another argument where they're saying too much power is in the hands of a few companies right now, right? Or few
that's
founders,
why
whatnot.
we need open source.
We need open source. That's your point, right? No, that's really interesting. And that was actually going to be the last question I was going to ask you. What is one differentiator you hold? And I think you've already answered that in that sense, right? Yeah, I think it's for us to really think about it. But then as the average user, my question is, how do you actually boycott these companies? Or if not boycotting, how do you actually make an impact? Because if I'm not the developer creating an open source model for the average person to use, me as an average user, what do I do?
Well, like just use the model to do like the thing you want to do. Like try to embrace the model and be more patient for open source models, because obviously the open source model is not as good as top tier closed source models. But like you kind of with the open source models, you keep all your secret to yourself. So like you can have better like security, and you can have better control. Open source model will never betray you if you just run it on your local laptop.
It
So
hosted
although the
yourself.
model is not performing like as well, because he's not distilling yourself, still you can trust on your open source models and give it like a lot more tasks to do. Like I do feel that a lot of open source model is actually capable of doing things, but the expectation might be like, think of it as 6 months, like a cloud version of, let me put it another way. So think of it as the old closed source models, and like be patient with that, and you can grow up with the open source model together.
That's very interesting. Thank you so much for your time, Tom.
Thank you, Grace.
Thank you for listening to AI Proem's Differentiated Understanding. This is your host, Grace Xiao. If you enjoyed the episode, please give it a follow and a thumbs up on Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for listening. See you next time.